What is up, everyone? Welcome at the Revenue Systems Decoded podcast. Today's guest is Amos from Swan AI, and Amos has built and exited two B2B SaaS companies following the unicorn playbook, raising venture capital, building sales teams, closing six-figure deals, and exiting twice. And he's seen that world from the inside, but with Swan, he's doing something radically different. In just 9 weeks, they went from 0 to 1 million in ARR without a sales team, zero paid ads, and zero employees besides the three founders. Not through luck, but through a systematic approach that they call the autonomous business model. Here's the contrarian thesis. Instead of scaling to 200K, 500K revenue per employee like most SaaS companies, I would say that's already the good ones. Amos is targeting 10 million ARR per employee. So they currently have over 200 paying customers, including companies like Guru and Yodpo. And they're generating 1.5 million in monthly pipeline with Amos as a one-person GTM department. But here's what makes this interesting for Revenue Systems Decoded. He isn't just building a company, he's engineering a system, right? Every growth lever is measured, every AI agent has a specific job, and every decision is optimized for velocity and vanity metrics. So today we're going to go deep on the frameworks, the validation moments, the agent architecture, and most importantly, what didn't work. Because Amos has rejected over 50 VC offers in the last year, and he can tell you exactly why the math doesn't work anymore. If you ever wondered whether you actually need to hire that next SDR, or if there's a systematic way to generate pipeline through content, or how to validate that your growth isn't just early adopted noise, this conversation is for you. So let's decode the system behind building an autonomous business. Amos, welcome to Revenue Systems Decoded.
Amazing, Olivier. Thank you so much for the intro. I feel like I have nothing to share above that. That was amazing.
I'm sure you'll have plenty to share, but yeah, appreciate you joining on the pod. Basically, yeah, really curious about how you hit that 1 million ARR in 9 weeks, right? Because a lot of people can assume that it would be early adopter fluke, right? Rather than systematic growth. So can you walk us through the validation framework that you used and what were like 3 to 5 leading indicators that you tracked on a daily basis to tell you that it's like, sustainable growth?
Yeah, so I would say at the beginning that fast ARR growth is amazing, but it's not the only thing to optimize for. A lot of time you have a lot of AI tourists coming along and you see fast ARR growth, but but even faster churn after that. So it's not only about how fast you grow, it's how sustainable that growth is. And I think that's something that is really overlooked today in the AI world. Um, for Swan, it wasn't like a one day miracle where everything aligned kind of like suddenly. We took a big bet on founder led marketing, and we realized that we have a very powerful story to tell about how we're building our company different. We didn't hit home at the first LinkedIn post. It actually took us some time to get there. Um, Before we even launched Swan, I started writing publicly about how we want to build Swan and what we believe is the right future for go to market. And we actually had a slightly different narrative at the beginning. And I was talking more about the importance of the human role within go to market, which is something that I still strongly believe. But somewhere along the lines of sharing my belief about that, I've shared openly that we're building a different kind of business and that we're trying to build it as an autonomous business, a business that has autonomous employees and autonomous agents working together. And that hit, like that really hit strong. You saw immediately that the market is reacting to that message, to that narrative. And from there, it was really easy to get attention because after a lot of iterations, we realized, okay, this is something that the market wants more from. And I started doubling down on the founder led marketing motion, sharing on LinkedIn posts that generated consistently over 1 million impressions on LinkedIn. And what we gradually did is we built an agentic system around that storytelling on LinkedIn that is looking at those leads that are interacting with my content from top of the funnel, folks that are actually interacting with the content, to folks that are sending me connection requests, to folks that are visiting my website, and then inbound leads in the pipeline, meeting follow-ups, all that process. Basically, we identified it through a human AI collaboration lens. And that led to massive pipeline growth that led to massive ARR growth very fast in a very scalable way that a one person could lead.
Amazing, amazing. So that's basically the playbook that you've been continuously doubling down on, right? But what made you kind of believe in that and initiate that and take that bet, especially in the early days when there was no revenue and limited growth, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think we had two principles that led us to choosing that path. The first one is that when you want to scale fast, and you don't want to go through the old growth at all cost model when you pay $10 for each customer that gives you $1, right? And you're just burning cash. If you want to grow fast, but in a sustainable way, you got to be creative and go to market. And the first design principle we had was that if the playbook that we're following is already adopted, then it means that it's not very efficient. You got to be contrarian in the playbook that you're choosing to take a bet on, because the more contrarian the bet, the more high yielding the reward could be. So no risk, no reward. And that's, I can't find, it's true in the casino and it's true in marketing and in go to market. And so that was the first design principle that we had, right? We got to take a contrarian bet. And so that led us to, okay, maybe we don't do cold outbound or just, sending messages on LinkedIn without any reason or something like that, right? You got to be more sophisticated. And then the second design principle was that we always follow our zone of genius in the company. So we believe that applying AI in the right way within the company is, you look at your existing talent, you ask yourself, what is our zone of genius? Where is the place where our skills and passion intersect to creating disproportionate value to the company? Then you build a system around that zone of genius where AI automates what's outside of it, the mundane, and amplifies what's within. And for me, my zone of genius is storytelling. I love telling stories. If you didn't figure it out yet during this podcast, so we realize that if you connect my zone of genius to a contrarian bet, then founder-led marketing and pushing a narrative on LinkedIn could be the perfect storm for us. And so when we started, we didn't know that this is going to be a successful bet, but we knew that the reward could be big if we nail it.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love that you mentioned the zone of genius thing because it's a very underrated principle, I would say.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I think that there are two camps right now in AI. One camp is wrong, the other camp is right. You can guess where which camp am I? But the camp that is wrong think that AI is really good at replacing humans at their jobs. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to take that technology and asking themselves, where can AI be better than a human, or at least as good as a human at their job? And they're trying to replace it. And you see the examples of AI SDRs, AI support agents, etc. All of them, 100% of them are failures right now, right? If you look at the AI SDR market explosion, a lot of demand, a lot of companies trying it. No one really sees success out of it. Just a fancy, outbound agency, basically, that it puts spam on steroids. And if you look at support, right? So we've seen Klarna, for example, which remove their entire support team and replace them with AI agents. And initially they say, wow, it's amazing. The stock went high. But after 8 months, they moved back and they say, okay, we're bringing back our support reps and we're trying to take a more human AI collaboration approach. And so that camp is wrong. And that was the first wave of AI startups. And now we're seeing the second wave, which Swan is part of that, which tries to reimagine how do humans and AI collaborate in a work environment where humans stay in their zone of genius. AI amplifies that and takes away what's outside.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because we all have, well, I guess you guys don't anymore, but we all have a lot of frustrations on a day-to-day basis, or things that we feel like, "Oh, now I need to do this admin stuff as a salesperson then, or like, I don't know, whatever. Now I need to be creative, but I'm an accountant, like, those kind of stuff that are really, as you say, outside of zone of genius, but were kind of considered part of the job. And then at some point, it's from an hour a week to a day to like, and before you know it, it's half your job and you're just out there miserable, right? But so when applying AI agents or thinking of this concept and where to actually then implement it, what would you say is like your quality control system, right? Can you walk us through an example where, for example, one of the agents that you guys work with or even at a customer have implemented made a mistake, right? That was seen by a customer, by an actual human, right? How you caught it and what changes did you then make to prevent it?
Yeah. So agents can go rogue, and we've seen that happen time and time again. It's not a bulletproof technology, to say the least. And we've built a lot of interesting measures to help with that. And we have a couple of design principles that really help us cope with that. But I think it's more interesting to hear about a good story of where it happened first. So Swan, by the way, for those of you who are listening and don't know, Swan is an AI go-to-market engineer. Okay, it's basically kind of like Lovable for GTM. You work with it, you chat with it, and it helps you take any go-to-market process and turn it into an agentic workflow in seconds, from prompt to pipeline. And the way that people interact with it, our users, they just chat with it either in Slack or either in our dashboard. And it's a free text. You can take it to wherever you want. And one time, a user asked Swan, "Hey Swan, I want to upgrade my plan. I finished my credits and I want more." So amazing, exactly the type of conversation we'd like to see from our users. And Swan has a knowledge base built into it. So whenever it gets a user request, it goes into that knowledge base, asks like, "Okay, do I have any context here that could help me?" The thing is that we just updated our pricing a week ago. Swan wasn't aware of that kind of like evolution. It had that updated pricing, but I didn't know that we just updated the pricing. And so Swan shared the pricing with the user and said, "Yeah, this is our pricing for your next package. It's X. What do you think about that?" The user said, "Wait, but I remember you had a different pricing. It was, $100 less or something like that." Swan surprisingly said, "Oh, wow, you are right. And you know what? You deserve that old pricing. We can give you a discount, no problem at all." And the user was so happy. He said, "Amazing. Yeah, let's go. Let's do it." And Swan said, "Okay." And that it don't have access to our billing system because we restricted it from it. So Swan escalated to the team. It can escalate things to us. So I get a message from Swan. It's a real story. I get a message from Swan. "Hey, we have a customer that wants to upgrade." Amazing. I'm happy. And then I see kind of like the next line. It says, "This is the price. They get a discount." I forwarded to my co-founder of the product, Ido, and I'm saying, "What the F is happening here?" And then we had a dilemma. Basically, should we give the pricing, the user that pricing or not, right? That was the first one. We said, "Okay, yeah, for sure. We prefer building long relationships here instead of just getting quick wins." So we gave that customer that pricing discount. But more interestingly, we needed to decide, okay, what do we do here from like onwards? How do we handle these situations? And we don't think that someone doesn't have the competency over time with the right context to manage that situation in the right way. But what we asked ourselves, which I think is the biggest lesson here for everyone that is using AI internally or externally, is that we asked ourselves, where do we think humans should be involved in this process? And where do we think AI should be? Okay. And that is the most important question to ask, because the moment we asked that, it was super crystal clear to us that these are the conversations that we want to be involved in. When a user wants to upgrade their subscription, of course, that's an amazing situation to pull us in the loop and just be able to apply our intuition and empathy and understanding of the sensitive situation to just make sure that we take them to the next step in their buying journey, right? And so it was obvious to us that from now on, Swan will always escalate commercial discussions to the team, not because it doesn't have the competency, but because we think that is the right moment that humans should intervene. And that is the right way of thinking about human AI collaboration within your workspace.
Yeah, basically everything that is a little bit more or needs more nuance or is under development also frequently perhaps could be taken into human conversation, right?
Yeah, but I would say, Oliver, it's not about necessarily about being nuanced, because it's not about. I don't think we should ask ourselves, is the AI good enough? to handle that nuanced situation. It's not what we're asking ourselves. I think what we're asking ourselves is if we apply a human here, will we get a better result? Right?
Right.
And the answer was clearly yes. And it doesn't need to be nuanced. It could be in different situations. And for example, a lot of the times it actually relates to your talent within your company. So if you're doing, I'll give you an example. If you've built an amazing cold calling culture in your company, and you're really good at cold calling. And then there's an amazing automated AI cold calling solution that comes here, right? And so one team that is really bad at cold calling might say, yeah, let's do that. Let's just use that because we suck at cold calling. Let's just give the AI do that. But if you're good at it, that is your competitive advantage in GTM, then you should preserve that. You shouldn't replace your cold calling operations with AI. You should think, how could I use AI to amplify my talent so they spend all day long on the phone, right? And so the question is can AI do this? Is can my team do it better? And can I scale them while and not replace them?
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. That's very great advice actually, and a good perspective on it as well. And so you've mentioned before also that decision velocity is something that matters more than headcount, kind of in line with what you just said, right? Can humans do it better? And so also can then a lot of those micro decisions be automated, etc., right? But how do you actually measure it, right? What's like a metric? Is it time from idea to production? Is it number of decisions per week? And like what's the current velocity versus what it would be in a traditional structure?
Yeah. So first of all, for those who didn't read my point of view about the decision making velocity, a quick summary here is that when you're building a startup, if you're not Microsoft or Google or something like that, when you're building a startup, your only built in advantage is how fast are you making decisions? Okay. How many decisions could you make in a single given day? Basically, because Google could out market you, out engineer you, outsell you. They could out everything you. The only thing they can do is make more decisions faster at a given day. Why? Because they are a complex, bureaucratized monsters. And they've built a lot of chains and restrictions around making decisions, and you don't have these. And so when we're building Swan as an autonomous business, a business that is really designed towards human AI collaboration, not human to human coordination, what we're optimizing for is decision making velocity. How can we unlock and unleash our employees so they could move as fast as they can, right? We only are 3 people. So it's not a lot of employees, but what we do basically is that everyone is independent in the company and can run a lot very far without looping in another person on the team to get their decision making process approved. So the way that we measure it is a different thing. And first of all, our core metric at Swan that we optimize for is not valuation like the old playbook. We don't believe in valuation inflation. What we're optimizing for is ARR per employee, and we want to get to $10 million ARR per employee, like you mentioned earlier on, Olivier. And this is more about value creation rather than valuation inflation. And what we're not optimizing for too much actually is measuring everything. And I think this is an important lesson for everyone because building a data driven approach is critical when you're building a startup, but over relying on data could actually make you slower. And why is that? Because at the early days, if for every experiment you need to build the right data analytics equivalent, then you won't move as fast as you need, right? And I give it an amazing example, that product decisions at early stages are derived from intuition a lot, not from analytics, actually. The reason why is that, you're a product manager and you don't have time to take a control group and build an A/B testing environment and measure the analytics across every single instance. You have a strong intuition that if you will move this feature from the center of the screen to the right of the screen, that would unlock the user experience here and we'll see a major shift. You do that, don't have that control group, but you see a lift off and you understand that, okay, I have strong intuition that this is what really moved the needle here, right? And so to your point, Olivier, about how do we measure decision making, I think some of it regards to intuition because you can't really measure how many decisions you're making, but you should ask yourself about your hierarchy. you should ask yourself when you're looking at your processes, how many of them can be driven by an individual contributor? And I think that's a very interesting prism to actually look at things because if individual contributors can carry a lot more processes on their own, that means that you have your decision making velocity higher.
Yeah, right. Basically increase the output um, per person by applying agentic help. Let's call it like that. Amazing, cool. And so, yeah, you've already mentioned it here that you are a small team, right? 3 people, still 100% founding team. Amazing. Revenue guy, product guy, agent guy, which is nice. So, if you were to hire someone tomorrow, though, that would probably mean that, as you just said, probably one function is now carrying too many processes, right? Which function do you think it would be, and at what ARR do you think it might happen?
Yeah. So Swan story isn't about just three people building a big company. It's not about that. It's about a journey to create massive leverage and to unlock the 100x version of each employee within the company. So we could grow outside of three people. And we are thinking about it. The constraint was more to ensure that we really explore the possibilities of creating leverage with human AI collaboration, right? And that actually what happened. But when we're looking at expanding the team, so of course, development velocity, software development velocity is a bottleneck. And so hiring another developer, like a 10x engineer, generalist, someone who could do everything with AI would create massive outcomes right now. We know that. And the second addition to the team would be actually somewhere between an account executive and account manager. Okay. But this would be a senior person who have a lot of experience in go to market, both at bringing in new business and expanding in existing business. And I think that we need to break that line that separates between, AEs that have quotas of bringing just new business and then throwing it out to account managers or customer success that are in charge of actually building a healthy business because eventually you want healthy revenue. And the problem that a lot of go-to-market teams feel is that, the incentives are misaligned across the entire funnel. So they bring unhealthy MQLs that turn into unhealthy SQLs that eventually turn into unhealthy customers. Every kind of like piece of the change throws the baton at someone else, right? And so when I'm thinking about growth, I think that someone who could own both net new business and existing customers and try to think about their journey together and their growth would actually be an amazing persona at the company and could create massive leverage with the right AI system around.
Yeah, totally. Nice. And going back to the LinkedIn posting, like obviously, I think you've shared before that most of your pipeline comes from that, if not all, right? Like you're kind of all in on that. And a lot of companies who are exploring that or like just starting that are kind of finding it hard to then attribute which content brought the most deals, revenue, pipeline, even, right? And I know attribution on a whole is a whole topic, but how do you look at that? And what are kind of your, what's your process, so to say, and which tools do you leverage? You've mentioned before, right? You're going to go and monitor, listen for the people who engage and then reach out to them. But yeah, maybe walk us through the full process if you want.
Yeah, so we do it in several ways. We do it by using Swan, by the way. And Swan can monitor my LinkedIn posts and the engagement on these posts and can attribute which type of post contributed more to the pipeline. And that is one way that we're doing it. And another way, which is actually interesting, is we have Swan listening to our call transcripts in the inbound. And Swan has kind of like an ontology taxonomy, which means like these are the words that you should actually look for and share us like in how many meetings this week these words were surfaced. And you can see that our customers are repeating the messages that are sticky, and they're not repeating the messages that are not sticky, right? So that's a very good indicator to have just an agent monitoring your call transcripts to understand your message market fit.
Yeah, that's, I think, probably the best feedback loop that any business could have. Yeah, you can make it full circle like that. That's amazing. So yeah, you've also said that agentic systems can go rogue, and also obviously I can imagine with three people and the speed at which you're going that things break, right, regularly. So is there any specific workflows or anything that you've built recently that completely failed, right? And also, what was the hypothesis when building it? How did you kind of validate it? What then broke, and what was like the systematic learning? Because I think a lot of people out there are trying to get into building something agentic, but there's probably still like quite some education that needs to be done on what is agentic to begin with, but also how do you kind of go about it, as in like, do you have any framework there?
Yeah. So to your question about what broke lately, I would say most of things. Right. And I think that's the reality with AI agents is that they break and they're more like humans than rather than machine in the sense that they make mistakes and they apply sometimes the wrong judgment. And without the good context, they will do a poor job, just like, interns in that way. Right. So um, we have a very strong point of view here that we think that 99 of AI implementations fail because they don't really adopt like this framework. It means that when you're bringing in an AI tool, you're optimizing for perfection, not for adaptation. And that's the biggest mistake that you're doing. The reason is that when you try to run an AI project or implement a solution, is that you don't really know what good looks like. You think you know, but you don't really. There's a lot of unknowns here, either on the AI side, which is like how the AI will behave given this context, given this task, etc. Second is how would that interact with my systems, and how would that interact with the workflow? And third, how would the AI interact with the humans at the end of this process, right? And so you have a lot of unknowns here that you need to factor in, and that prevents you from really understanding what perfection looks like when you start. And so instead of optimizing for perfection, you should optimize for adaptation. You should make sure that you implement systems that can adapt, that can take feedback and implement it successfully in a fast and iterative manner. And so the way that we built Swan is that Swan is designed around feedback loops. You don't need to spend weeks building complex NA10 workflows or clay tables just to see them fail the moment that you deploy them. You have a very quick setup with Swan with natural conversation, and in a matter of 30 minutes, 20 minutes, you have something running in the background that requires a human to review at critical failing points as an approach from day one. And what happens is that the human can review these critical points and can see if something isn't right. The moment they see it, they tell the AI, yeah, you know what? Swan, when we handle an inbound lead that is a bank, we actually want to make sure that we understand the entire buying committee and we want to make sure that they're only in the Midwest of America because we only work with banks there. Amazing. I didn't really think about that niche use case when I built that workflow, but now when Swan surfaced that, it's obvious this is what we do. And so the context extraction mechanism that Swan uses is feedback loops. Instead of trying to push everything into the onboarding process, it builds a human in the loop process at the beginning and then gets the right feedback for every use case on the fly so it can adapt and grow with you. And the truth is that GTM is not a constant. GTM is constantly changing, it's adapting, it's growing. Your team changes, your understanding of the market changes, your product changes, the buyer behavior changes, everything changes all the time. So you must have a solution that can adapt with you.
100%. 100%. Yeah, one red line that I start to see throughout this conversation, Amos, is really about, yeah, treat AI agent. I mean, treat is probably the wrong phrasing here, but they're more similar than to humans than we think at the moment, right? So they're
I think that
almost.
they are more similar to interns. I think
Uh-huh.
that's the right
Okay.
framing to think of it. And it's not about giving them human like emotions and we need to unionize and give them rights, but it's more about how to think about it from a working perspective. So you should more treat them less like software, but more like interns. Interns
Right.
They start, you give them a relatively short onboarding, give them context about the business, and you throw them into a specific small task that they could carry themselves. And whenever there's a critical point, you want them to involve another person to review their output and give them feedback, right? So an intern model is a better model to.
Yeah, amazing. Nice. You have some put some thought into this already, of course. That's nice. And going back to your like kind of target of the 10 million ARR per employee, which is mainly there to be able to push the boundaries of what's possible through human and AI enablement, right? But still, it's like 20 to 50 times better than a traditional SaaS business, right? So can you like walk us through the unit economics that would make that possible, right? So what's your like current cost to acquire a customer through LinkedIn content? What's then the LTV? What's your gross margin? Because you're not paying salaries besides yourselves, right? So yeah, anything you want to share here on the numbers would be amazing.
Yeah, so I would say first that we don't spend a dollar on marketing, okay, right now. And so the acquisition cost is time that we spend on writing posts, on working with Swan, on meeting these folks. So you could just think of the proportion of the time that we spend as the customer acquisition cost. In terms of like LTV, it's hard for us still to predict because we're a new business. And
Mhm.
so we're not a consumer play. So it's not really easy for us to analyze and project growth based on that. But I think that the numbers that is more interesting for us that we are monitoring closely is NRR, which is net retention revenue. And I think that is the most overlooked metric when we're looking at AI startups. And with all the hype, I feel like everyone is talking about ARR growth. And then we have like this 0.1 percentage of startups that did like 1 to 100 million ARR growth, amazing in 1 year. And it puts all the other 99% of startups and companies out there in a position that, wait, why are we not growing like that? Right. But it's not the full story here because ARR growth doesn't mean anything if the customers that come and buy your product doesn't stay, right? If they don't stay, then you're not really building a sustainable business. You're building an attention monetization business, which is a different game. And you might win that game, but it's a totally different game. And so I think that startups should focus more on net retention revenue. And that means that if you have, by the way, for the audience, benchmarks, if you have below 80%, it means that you're not a good place. If you have above 100%, means that you're okay. If you're like Swan and you have 130%, NRR, then that's amazing, basically. And for those of you who don't know what is NRR specifically, what does it mean, net retention revenue? It means that you look at a specific cohort that comes to your business and you see, okay, on January, we closed $100,000. Amazing. What happened to that specific cohort that generated $100,000 in a quarter, in 6 months, in a year? Okay. If over the course of that year, these $100,000 are still $100,000, that's okay. Okay, that's not bad. If they are $80,000, that's not good because you're bleeding money, right? If you're like lovable, all these startups, you probably get $100,000, and at the end of the year, you're left with maybe $30,000, right? Which is terrible. And if you're in a good position, like we are, okay, at Swan, you get $100,000 and that turns into $130,000 at the end of the year. So customers are not only satisfied enough to stay with you, they want to expand, they want to grow their usage.
Yeah, they're spending more indeed. Simple. Very simple explanation there. And it is indeed an underrated concept and something that, yeah, gets
Yes.
sometimes put into the hands of customer success, but it's actually a company metric, in my opinion. Anyway, you've also checked it and mentioned already that you've changed your pricing. I think it's outcome based now. So yeah, but what was your transition process, and also how did you communicate that to existing customers, or like did you kind of do it in phases, and did you see any churn because of it?
Yeah, so pricing is a huge topic right now. And I think that Pricing is undergoing maybe the biggest revolution of all industries and domains due to AI. More than customer support and go to market, what is experiencing the most disruption to it is pricing. The underlying reason for this huge disruption is that we've been accustomed to see the software industry as a very high margin industry where you have software as a service model, the SaaS model, which was the holy grail for investors and for everyone. And what changed is that from being a SaaS business, you're actually turning into a reseller business, right? A real seller. Reseller, wholesaler business means that you're buying tokens, you're wrapping it up in your application, and you're reselling, right? But still the fundamental unit of value here is tokens that you bought from OpenAI or from Anthropic or from Gemini, from Google. And so you need to change your entire business model to ensure that the unit economics works. And so what happens here is that there's a lot of complexity right now. SaaS was simple. The costs were negligence, and we could just say, okay, what's the best buyer experience? How can we give you an amazing buyer experience? We put it as a subscription. Everything is predictable, and we just try to monetize as much as we can. But when you're a reseller, you don't have that luxury of just asking yourself, what's the best buying experience? Because a lot of these experiences are now locked out because they mean very bad unit economics. And so all that complexity can be translated into an outcome based model or a usage based model or anything around that. And I think that we're still early on in the days, and I don't want to sound like I have all the answers here, but what we're looking at it is we're asking ourselves two questions. Okay. One is how can we remove that complexity from the buyer to our side as much as we can? This complexity that emerged from the fact that, we have tokens right now and every interaction might cost money, etc. But from the other side, how can we ensure that the model is sustainable? And so we try to push on these two fronts all the time. And that creates different pricing models, different technology to monitor the back end and to optimize and things like that. What we landed on right now is a subscription based model where we charge per usage. What does that mean? Is that you buy credits in advance. You pay $500, for example, and you get 10,000 credits. And that is predictable. You know that every month you're going to pay $500 and you're going to get 10,000 credits. And it's predictable. So it's a little bit similar to the SaaS model, but it's still usage based. So we know that as long as you're within the $500 cap, we are positive in terms of the margin. And so I try to create that balance from both sides.
Amazing. Yeah. Made me think also on, yeah, I love the wrapping of, or just like, the fact you're owning that, you're wrapping that, which I think is a big thing in the market also for many AI tools out there. Anyway, that aside, so I know you have to go, but this has been incredible. So maybe one last thing for the operators who are listening and who want to apply even just one piece of this whole system and everything that you guys do with agents. So if they could only implement one thing from what we discussed today, what would you tell them to start with tomorrow, like a very specific, systematic first step that has potentially the highest ROI?
Yeah. Take a process. So first of all, start from looking inwards, not outwards. Don't look at solutions, look at problems. Spot a process that you think that if you could alleviate some pressure out of it, or you can just solve a small challenge within that process, it will move the needle for the business. Identify that process. Then within that process, identify the step that you think that if you could enhance or improve or remove, that will improve that process. If you did that successfully, you did 99% of the work successfully. Now you could either use a tool like Zapier or like a no-code tool to try to think about how to unlock that place. And you want to use AI there, but it's not about being an AI engineer or something. It maybe would be just a prompt somewhere or a simple step in the workflow that could solve it. But if you got the first step right of nailing the exact step of the process, then everything would become super clear to you. And so you either use a Zapier. If it's in go-to-market, you can use Swan for it. It would help you remove all the technical complexity from it, or just try to understand which type of solution of AI solution you really need here, and you'll find one. But everything is dependent on how good you do the work of actually spotting and understanding that one step that if you solve for it, it will actually move the needle. Start small, iterate, and then grow bigger.
Amazing advice. Thank you so much for coming on the show. People can find you on LinkedIn, anywhere else where you want to send them besides maybe to the website.
Yeah, well, I have a newsletter. It's called The Big Shift
Okay.
on Beehive. So if you want to get a front row seat to how we're building Swan, the do's and don'ts, the failures and the wins, you can just subscribe and join to the ride.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Amos, and have a very nice rest of your day.
Thank you for having me, Elvira.